On this episode of Bite Sized, we are watching and discussing the 60-second scene of the movie Twilight. For those of you watching along at home, that's from 1:38:10 to 1:42:00. Also, we are working on our first live show happening July 6th. More information about that at the end of the show or at twilightpodcast.com/live. And now, on to the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of Bite Sized. If this is your first episode, here's what's going on. My name's Ben. I am your host. I'm watching the movie Twilight one scene at a time with a different guest every week. I find someone to be on the show. I send them roughly, 2 to 4 minutes of the movie Twilight, more on the 4-minute side of things this time, and then we talk about it for about a half hour with sometimes little to no other context. Speaking of guests, joining me today is an actor, voice actor, teacher, frequent podcast guest, so thank you for guesting on this one as well. Add it to your mini list of podcasts on which you've guested. There it is. Rio Shigeta, welcome to Bite Size.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Would this be a good time to present you with a gift?
I would love gifts. Yes, thank you.
Yes. So, in Japanese culture, it's very rude to come into someone's place empty-handed. So, I brought you, and hopefully this doesn't make too much noise, a deli cup full of cough drops.
Hell yes. Thank you. What flavor are these?
That's a great question. I have no idea.
Where did you find these cough drops?
They were a Costco bag.
Amazing. I'm going to set this next to my roughly, I just doubled my cough drop count. This is incredible. Thank you so much.
Should we both have one? Will that be terrible for recording?
I've got one in right now, but if you want one, I can have one later.
Did I out you to your editor?
No, you didn't. I always have cough drops in my mouth when I'm recording this.
Excuse the unwrapping.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
I did not know the etiquette part of things. I just know that you happen to be moving countries, moving to Japan in about a month or so, and I just assumed you're trying to offload as much stuff as possible, and you didn't want to fly these cough drops all the way to Japan.
Guilty as charged.
Where I'm assuming they have perfectly good cough drops and deli cups.
Yes, I don't want to be caught trafficking cough drops or any other drugs. Not my intention. Absolutely not at all.
I'm going to start this interview the way I start every interview on the show. That is by asking you, what is your history with the Twilight franchise?
I know that it is about vampires.
You know that it exists. We're off to a great start.
It is based on books.
Mm-hmm.
It stars Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart.
This is all very technically correct. You've done a great job of listing things about Twilight, but on a more personal level.
I'm fairly certain that I have been in rooms when the movie has been on.
Okay.
Multiple times.
Okay. You've never intentionally watched the movies or read the book.
I cannot say I have.
Okay. That's fine.
I have had some secondhand interaction with the starring actors of Twilight. Yes.
I'm incredibly curious now.
So my wife, who's also named Kristen, used to work in Los Angeles at a brunch restaurant. So at this specific restaurant, for a period of time, Kristen Stewart actually was a regular customer.
Really?
Yes. And my wife, Kristen, who was a waitress there, would see her frequently. And one of the days that she was working, my wife noticed that some paparazzi were sitting at a table and trying to discreetly take photos of Kristen.
Weird.
Wife of Kristen, actress.
Yes.
Wife noticed this, went over and accosted them, scolded them, told them that that's not cool. This is a private establishment. You need to go.
Yeah.
Apparently, actress Kristen saw this, appreciated this, and was like, "You're my girl. You're going to be waiting on me for the rest of the time that I'm here."
Seriously?
So that was, yes. Now, secondhand story, but kind of cool.
I mean...
I also have Robert Pattinson connection.
Okay.
Same restaurant.
You did not tell me any of this when I asked you to be on the show, and I'm really glad I'm learning it now.
The restaurant that she worked at also had a koi pond.
Okay.
And Robert Pattinson at his manse in Los Angeles also kept koi fish. Mm-hmm. And apparently Robert Pattinson and the restaurant had the same fish guy.
Really?
And when Robert Pattinson's pond couldn't accommodate, for whatever reason it might have been construction, it might have been too many, whatever the reason was, some of his koi had to migrate to the
he
restaurant.
He has to kennel his fish at this restaurant?
Correct.
Oh, my God.
So 3 big old koi, at least 3, apparently resided there in the restaurant. But there was an incident.
Okay.
So one day, my wife went to work at the brunch restaurant, and the support staff are all surrounding the koi pond. And Kristen, wife Kristen, who is a very big true crime fan, was convinced that there was a body floating in the koi pond.
Maybe there was.
Quite the opposite. There was nothing in the koi pond.
Nothing.
Apparently, someone overnight or a crew of people had committed a koi heist, jumping the fence. I mean, it was outdoors. It's not hard to get to, but had stolen all of the koi fish. And so Robert Pattinson's koi fish were stolen from the brunch restaurant.
This is insane. Yeah. We're not talking about the scene. Did they ever sort of determine why someone would steal koi fish?
I can tell you, koi fish are expensive.
Okay. This was some sort of black market resellers.
Basically, somewhere out there in the black market 10 years ago, maybe, there were Robert Pattinson's koi fish that
were they
and sold?
Do you think that they knew this was some sort of very small scale Ocean's 11? This was the bling. You remember the bling ring, of course.
Right.
This was the bling ring, but instead of celebrity jewelry, they were stealing celebrity koi fish, and I guess reselling them. Yeah, as big ass goldfish that used to belong to Robert Pattinson.
It had to be, right?
I guess.
And is there a markup for them belonging to Robert Pattinson?
Yeah. Was Robert Pattinson ever made whole, either in terms of monetary damages, or did they buy him a new fish? Did he ever intend to get those fish back after construction was done? What the hell?
How does one go about doing that?
You just
chasing fish thieves.
Well, not necessarily those exact koi.
Right.
I wouldn't presume he had some sort of bond with them if he just sort of loaned them to a restaurant.
Right.
But did they ever? Did your Kristen wife? Did Kristen wife's like boss, the owner of that place, have to pay for new fish for Robert Pattinson? Which is a sentence I never thought I would say out loud.
I'm guessing that the fish guy was ultimately liable for that, because it was probably the fish guy's decision to house them there. And I don't even think that it was a temporary arrangement. So fish guy, if you're out there, I hope you're doing all right.
And if I ever meet Robert Pattinson, I swear to you now, the first thing I will ask him is, did you ever get your koi back?
In one piece.
Or at all, in several pieces.
Were they abducted for ransom?
Yeah.
Did he get like a koi tail sent to his manse?
Maybe.
I hope not.
I guess my last question, there were already koi in this pond at the restaurant. Did they know? Did like your wife know, oh, those koi are Robert's koi? Because I imagine, I'm sure they all look different and distinct to those who love them. But if I worked at a place with a koi pond and you just slipped a few new koi in there owned by a famous person, I would not be able to tell you which were which.
Right. And I'm not entirely sure that there were koi before then.
There was just a pond?
There was just a pond.
Okay. You know why there was no koi in there to begin with?
Because there was no Robert Pattinson?
Because of the thieves.
Oh, yeah.
They were hitting this place up on the regular.
This was an easy hit for them.
Exactly. This is an easy score for their koi heisting. We do eventually need to talk about Twilight, though.
Okay.
So let's jump into the scene we're talking about today. And speaking of jumping in, that is an appropriate segue, because that is how basically everyone who enters or exits frame in this scene jumps in or out.
Yeah.
The brief overview, we pick up right where we left off from last time, because of course that's how all of this works, idiot. Bella is rescued kind of from the clutches of James by some vampires, starting with Edward and then a few more, and they fight for a while and do a good deal of property damage in the process. That's the overview. Let's get into the nitty gritty of the scene, because it does start with Edward flying in. James and him push each other into some mirrors. Yep. They break a lot of mirrors just generally over the course of this scene. I guess when you're a vampire, 7 years of bad luck isn't that as big a deal, because you are immortal and 7 years will
What is 7 years for infinity?
Exactly, right. Yeah. For me, that's God willing, approximately, I don't know, just below 10% of my life. For them, that's nothing. So I guess it's not that big a deal. They just sort of, I don't know, push each other a lot. and choke each other a lot.
There is a lot of grunting. Which is one of the 3 G's that I noticed about the scene.
Oh, what are those other 2 G's?
Grunting, glass.
Glass, yeah.
And green.
Green.
It's all green. Is the whole movie green or just this scene?
Well, it's interesting that you should say that because, Rio, we haven't had this in a while. But that is the Bluebell.
Okay.
This one is a little bit more green than it is blue. But yes, guests on the show have a tendency to bring up the weird color grading of the movie Twilight. Yes, pretty much the entire movie is like this.
Okay.
It is weirdly blue the entire time, so much so that I have to have a whole bell about it. But actually, I'm sort of, I hate to say it, but we're only a few, maybe 7 or 8 episodes away from retiring the Bluebell.
Oh.
Because this movie is the first of 5. Movies 2 through 5 are not that blue.
Oh,
they stop with the whole color thing. They just look normal after that.
All right.
It's weird. But yes, you are correct.
Okay.
Weird color is just sort of everywhere in this movie.
Grunts, green, and glass.
Grunting, glass, and green.
Mentioning mirrors, though, there is a cool moment just 30 seconds in, and we all know that vampires don't appear in mirrors.
It is true.
It's just a split second. If you watch real closely, Edward runs in front of this mirror, and he disappears for a moment in the frame. Yeah. I didn't catch it until like my 3rd watch of the scene.
And yet, I mean, here we have a different shot.
Inconsistency.
Where we have 2 Edwards and 2 Jameses very clearly reflected in a mirror. Maybe it's just an angle thing, but I guess this does. I feel like I've asked this question on the show in previous episodes, but like, do they appear in mirrors? And very clearly they do here, because there's a lot of mirrors and there's a lot of them appearing in them.
So then what did I see?
That's a great question. I'm going to try to find it as we continue to talk about this.
And there's like a distinct sound that it makes. It goes whoosh.
Yeah.
I guess he's do they have like teleportation or like super speed at certain points?
Yes.
There's a lot of fly work, so like
they can run really fast. That is one of their sort of suite of powers. No, I think I have what you're talking about here. Is this it? I think he may be running behind, or maybe it's an angle thing. I don't know.
Because he runs into the frame at the bottom, but then like you're clearly looking at what I think is a mirror, and then it's just like I thought that's what it was.
But then he comes from a different angle, so it's not like he ran behind it. I don't know.
Yeah.
All
right.
It's disorienting and hard to tell what's going on, and I think that's kind of on purpose.
A lot of that.
They're in a dance studio right now, obviously.
Optimal location.
Yeah, for this sort of thing, for 1,000 mirrors everywhere.
Do they always choose settings for battle in such treacherous circumstances?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Of course.
All I could think during this scene, though, is like, man, at some point, probably tomorrow, someone's going to open this dance studio and just see absolute destruction. Like at some point, I think it's James. Edward throws James down on the floor and he creates like an impact crater of broken wood and somehow
splinters up.
Weirdly sinks down into the floor in a way that does not make sense because that's not how floors work.
Nope.
Especially, they are on the ground floor. There is just concrete under that wood, and yet he's broken down into it like he's falling through the floorboards of the attic or something.
Right.
This is a weird sort of raised platform floor that doesn't make a ton of sense.
A crawl space, perhaps.
It looks cool, though.
Yeah.
And that's what's important.
And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, James throws around Bella, too, because Edward, I guess, isn't that great at fighting.
But he's fast.
He is faster than the others who have not showed up yet. The others will show up later in this scene.
You're alone, because you're faster than the others. But not stronger. I'm strong enough to kill you.
I guess he ran here super fast, like his vampire powers allow him.
Sure, yep.
But just the sort of I don't know if geography is the right word, but the logistics of who everyone in this scene was with just minutes ago in movie time, and the order in which they show up kind of doesn't make sense because Edward shows up first. He was with Carlisle. They were in the same car the last time we saw them.
Okay.
But he shows up first. Carlisle then shows up with Alice and Jasper, who the last time we saw them were in the same room. in a separate location from Edward and Carlisle. So many names to keep track of.
I was going to say, you know when you're with a group of friends who went to a different school than you, and they start telling you stories about that amazing time where two of the friends got in a fight at a ballet studio. This is exactly what's happening to me right now.
Is this what you're experiencing right
I'm like,
now?
Yeah.
This is
Carlisle's a person.
This is what it is to understand Twilight. I guess my question is, like, did they all meet up at one place and then decide to leave their cars where they were and run to the dance studio together?
So
I guess it would make sense because, like, Edward, no one really knew Bella was at this location. At some point, previous scenes ago, she was at a hotel with two of the vampires and then left without telling anyone. So I assume they all sort of convened at the hotel, figured out where she was, and then ran there.
Or each of them is a responsible car owner and had to find parking before they could enter the ballet studio.
Okay.
And Edward just ran.
He found parking first.
or that.
Yeah,
yes.
he got lucky.
That's how it is sometimes.
Yeah, it is.
Although I do have a question.
Yeah.
Why does Bella look terrified in the very beginning of the scene? It's like she sees Edward, but like sees something in him that she's scared of.
Well, her leg just got broken by the vampire. So the scene directly before this, she walks into the dance studio alone to meet the bad guy vampire,
James,
who spends a couple minutes just sort of beating her up and essentially slowly torturing her.
Okay.
So she's going through a lot right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Might also be why she doesn't say anything the entire scene.
No, she's in a good deal of pain.
Got it.
She's getting thrown around a lot. She's got broken glass sticking out of her thigh.
Right.
That could be deadly.
Yeah. But she does contribute to the grunting.
She does.
She does do that.
And continues, we complimented her in the last episode. Does, I think, a good job. This is such a weird part of acting that you don't really think about until you're in it, of just like sometimes acting is not saying words. It's just sort of like my wife is an actor.
Yep.
And she auditions for a lot of, like, we live in Chicago. She auditions for a lot of like Chicago Med, Chicago Fire type procedural shows. And a lot of those auditions are just for like a victim, or like someone who just got in a car crash or just learned their parents died. And so a lot of these auditions are just like, okay, scream and cry on camera for 30 seconds and give us a few different options. And that's just so, to me, a non-actor. That is so, it's unnatural. That anyone who can do that in a way that looks good has my utmost respect. And Kristen Stewart, I think, is doing a good job of it here.
Yeah. And it's funny, your wife and I went to the same university.
Yes, you did.
We learned from the same teachers at the University of Illinois. And we learned that acting happens between the lines.
Oh.
Yeah. That acting, number one, is reacting, but number two, if you're just waiting for your turn to speak, bullshit, my line, then you're not acting. You should be actively listening and waiting, not waiting, but responding to the stimulus that you receive. And so sometimes the stimulus is given to you, not in the form of the other person's line, but in the form of a broken piece of glass in your leg.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So acting is reacting.
Your broken femur that you just, or shin or whatever you just got.
Yes.
No, that it makes a lot of sense. And maybe that explains why acting seems so weird to me, because I didn't know that, because I've never taken even a single acting class. Yeah, she gets thrown around and beat up a lot more. Eventually, more vampires do show up. And we learned that one of their vampire abilities, not only can they run super fast and they're super strong and stuff like that, but they can also fall slower than gravity because Carlisle, Alice, and Jasper, three cool vampires whose names you've heard now a few times, they descend in some very clear wire work.
And in perfect sequential order.
Yeah.
Like an album cover.
And like one of them is even like doing a little arm wave and something like that. It is like... And again, this is something that I just like screaming. I know it is surprisingly difficult to look natural. I was involved with a big Christmas pageant once that involved an angel. You know, the angel who comes down to Mary and says you're going to have a baby was on wires, and I was not. I was not on the wires. I was operating the wires.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And like when we were getting trained on that, and as the actors were getting used to it, there was this whole conversation of like when you are in the wire suit, your body sort of defaults to like a bag of flour, and you have to like think about maintaining sort of a standing posture as you're just sort of suspended from ropes.
So here's another fun fact. Once upon a time, I played Peter Pan for a children's theater company in Chicago.
Just a quick side note, I think I've said before on this show that one of my favorite things to watch on YouTube is Peter Pan wire rig accidents. It's always hilarious. But anyway, continue.
Yeah. Well, all I'm going to say is when you're in a harness and on a wire and landing, I'll be damned if you do not want to flap your arms a little bit.
I bet.
That's just natural.
Yeah.
You're like,
I'm
whoop,
sure.
Whoop, whoop.
Alice goes directly to Bella, which makes sense. She's sort of the big sister of the bunch. Carlisle does... I don't understand his intentions in this scene because he runs to Edward, who's sort of in the act of killing James, and tells him to stop. Son, enough. And says, remember who you are.
Son. Enough. Remember who you are. Bella needs you.
The implication being there, sort of, we're not killers. This is that sort of classic, like, we're better than him. He kills, but we don't. It makes sense within the context of this one isolated 4-ish minutes of movie. But if you've seen the rest of the movie like I have, about 30 seconds later, they set his ass on fire. And like, kill him. So why do you stop Edward from killing him just to let other people kill him a second later? Also, he says Bella needs you right now to Edward. But Carlisle, the guy who is saying that Bella needs you, his job is medical doctor. So if there is anyone in the studio that Bella needs, it's Carlisle.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe don't interrupt your son. Don't say, hey, son, take your hands off the neck of the vampire that we're trying to kill and go administer aid. Even because he's the doc. It doesn't... Carlisle, what are you doing in this scene?
Well, it seems... I don't know. And I think that in the Twilight movies, there are also werewolves, right?
Not yet, but yes.
Eventually.
In the next... We've met a couple werewolves. We don't know that they're werewolves yet.
Okay. And so like the way in which Edward is like attacking James, it's almost feral. He's on another level of like, grr, I'm going to kill this guy. My impression of vampires is that everything is ceremonial. Everything has to have a process.
Yeah, you're not entirely wrong about that.
So, I mean, I think it's more that of like, this isn't how we do things. We'll ceremoniously light him on fire later together.
It just sort of seems like a terrible idea and really bad thinking under pressure to say, you've subdued the threat. Let him go so that you can go check out the injured person while I, a doctor, try to re-subdue the threat that you just subdued. It's like Carlisle needs to understand that like people have their roles in this plan, in this system, and everything's going fine. And he's now asking people to switch around and do things that they are not maybe the best built for.
I was going to say that decorum is important, but that's out the window through glass, apparently.
Yes, exactly. It is out the mirror.
Well, now an open window.
Yeah. We've established in sort of the last 5 or 6 episodes of this show that when push comes to shove, when the adrenaline kicks in and pressure is on, the Cullens are terrible at planning. And I think this is just sort of the last step of that. But yeah, Bella, in addition, somewhere in all the throwing around, she gets bit on the wrist. I wondered
about that.
Yeah.
Is she getting turned in this scene? Is that what's happening?
Well, she can. I mean, essentially, yes. If I recall correctly, vampires in Twilight can, and I think just in general vampire lore, is that you can turn, when you bite someone, a non-vampire, you can turn them into a vampire or drink all their blood.
Okay.
And I believe James's intent was to drink all her blood and kill her. But in Twilight, the way that vampirism works is vampires have this thing called venom, which when they bite into someone's bloodstream, the venom gets in.
Okay.
And if you just bite and let the venom in without drinking too much blood, the venom turns them into a vampire.
Okay.
But I guess if the venom gets in and then you drink all the blood, they just die. and there's no vampire, I think.
Is there a way to extract the venom? Is that something that Edward could do?
Yes, that's actually what Carlisle is going to tell him to do.
Okay.
And what my next guest will see in about 10 seconds of movie time is that essentially Edward has to go and suck all the venom out of Bella's arm.
And so Edward has to do it because Carlisle doesn't want to do it?
I don't know. It's a great question.
Is that a sexy thing? Like, you don't do it if it's your son's girlfriend?
That's really the only reason I could think is like Carlisle's just a romantic.
Right.
Because we see in this later scene that like Carlisle has been a vampire a lot longer than Edward. So he's a lot better at controlling his thirst for blood.
Yep.
And so later in the movie, in the next scene, we're going to see Edward starts to suck the venom out, and eventually he gets all the venom and is just drinking blood and is like, oh, yummy, yummy. And Carlisle has to come and be like, hey, dude, stop. And it just would sort of make sense that Carlisle really should be handling all of this. And let Edward, his quote son, who is, as we've established, the fastest of them,
apparently,
handle the fighting.
Yep.
And you, doctor, take care of the medicine.
Right.
It's backwards.
And is there like a state of bloodlust that the vampires get into that like is uncontrollable rage? Is that something that Carlisle's trying to prevent in Edward?
I mean, basically, yeah. There is, the vampires, the ones who are, don't have as much experience controlling it. If they smell or taste blood, kind of go a little crazy.
Okay.
And we'll see Edward start to do that here in a little bit.
Ooh. All right.
It's wild. There's just a lot going on in this scene.
Just to go along with all the grunting and the lusting, it's very orgasmic at times, and orientation be damned, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
Did you ever see the website Beautiful Agony?
No.
I don't know if it exists anymore.
I don't either.
It's a series of pictures and maybe videos focused exclusively on people's faces. And I think it is up to us to decide whether they are experiencing pain or an orgasm.
Okay.
From the small amounts that I've seen, of all the amount of Twilight that I've seen, I feel like it's just one extended cut of Beautiful Agony with vampires.
Interesting.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that kind of the thing with vampires? Is that like
there's definitely a major overlap between depictions of vampires and sort of sexuality. They are
pleasure and pain,
classically the sexiest of the monsters. Frankensteins and werewolves and fishmen,
right?
Usually,
bog monsters
aren't as sexy as they are.
Yeah, well, depends on what you're into, I suppose.
I suppose it does.
We all saw The Shape of Water. Some of us saw The Shape of Water.
Let's start to wrap this episode up because we've talked entirely too much about fish.
Oh, we got back to fish. We did it. We made it.
If you had to give this scene a name, what would it be? This is also going to be the name of the episode, so please make it good.
The 3 Gs.
The 3 Gs. We were right there the whole time. Very nice.
Yes.
Rio, if people like the sound of your voice and maybe want to hear you say things on other podcasts about other pop culture franchises and whatnot, where can they maybe follow you or listen to you or do things like that online, perhaps?
Yes, you can find me on most social media outlets at I Know Rio, spelled like it sounds. I don't post a whole lot, but you can go digging. I am not responsible for anything that you find.
Okay, there you go. If you want to follow this show on social media, you can do so at bitesizedpod_ on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, or just bitesizedpod, no underscore on Tumblr. We're also getting ready for our very first live show here in Chicago, Illinois at the Newport Theater, July 6th at 6 p.m. Come on out, see a live comedy show featuring me and previous guests and friends of the show, Ben Oxer and Sarah Murphy. We'll do some comedy that won't be recorded. We'll record an episode that will be recorded because that's how recording works, and you can get to see it all. All that information more available at twilightpodcast.com. specifically twilightpodcast.com/live to learn more about the live show. If you want to send an email to the show, you can send an email to myfavoritetwilightpodcast@gmail.com, or you can just leave comments on social media, like the 2 or 3 people who left comments on some Instagram posts over the last week saying things like, clearly you haven't read the books and all of your questions are answered in the books. Don't piss me off. And I want to say, you're right. I have not read the books because I have to draw the line somewhere. I've made it very clear this show is not about the books. If you listen to this show expecting to hear someone talk about the Twilight books, you are mistaken. I can direct you to some other good shows. This show is about the movies, God damn it. Thank you so much to my editor, Ben Oxher, for putting this all together. Thank you to the band Swimwear Department for letting me use their song Mauled to Death as our theme. And that is it. That is all we have for today. As we always say at the end of every episode,
I'm almost done with my cough drop.
I'm almost done with my cough drop. See you next time.
Hey, Editor Ben here. I don't really think there's very many funny clips in this scene to put after the outro music. So I just wanted to say my cat, Smoke, is very often sitting next to me on my desk while I work. And generally she's very chill, very unflappable. She did not enjoy the scary sounds and yells of this scene. She's downright perturbed. So you will be hearing from her lawyer, and I will go full John Wick on all y'alls. The things I do for you